Hey guys, Liam here from Profitable Contractors. So in today's episode of the podcast, we sat down with Shayne Buckley from Colorado. Now, what's really critical and why you need to check out this episode is we talked about a really big misconception that happens throughout the contracting industry, which is charging standard rates or charging what your competition charges or charging, what customers tell you is market price and how that is going to hold your business back. Shayne has grown his business 80% in 1 year with PFC and his profits are up over 50% year over year. And he talks about how he was charging below market rate. He was charging less than his competitors who are doing a crappier job, and how now charging a premium price and knowing his numbers has allowed him to really scale his business, get his time back, and make more profit. So if you're charging just based on what everybody else is or what your client tells you should, or what you heard someday, it's really going to be holding you back. So make sure you tune in. We cover all of that and how you can change it today. We'll catch you on the flip.
Until right now, this very moment, contractors have always been on their own, not as tradespeople, but being alone and knowing how to take their business to the next level. They call us working class. They call us blue collar. They say that we don't have the smarts to become the business owner that we're meant to be. That is such bullshit. You have the ability. You're more than any of that. The question really is, where do you get the insights that you need specific to contracting to systemize your business so you can get your profits to pay for your freedom? I'm Andrew Houston. I'm going to show you how to make more profits, how to get more control, how to get more freedom in the simplest, quickest way possible without any of that bullshit. Welcome to the No Bullshit Podcast for Contractors. Listen up, level up, and if you learn something, like the video, subscribe to the channel, change your business, change your life.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the No BS Podcast for Contractors. I'm joined today by Shayne Buckley from Colorado. He's been in PFC for a little bit over a year now and a bit. This is your second year, right?
Just finished my first year.
Yeah,
just going into the second.
Goes like second year. And what we're going to be covering today, guys, is kind of really the importance of understanding the numbers in your business, how to actually make profit on jobs, why it's so critical, and why maybe focusing on revenue or other metrics can kind of maybe lead you astray or really not get you the results you want. But first off, Shayne, why don't you just tell everybody a little bit about yourself, kind of the business you run, what you guys do, and, why you maybe kind of came to PFC in the first place, what was going on in the business that made you go, I got to change things. I got to get help.
Yeah. So again, Shayne Buckley, I run a company called FilterShine Front Range here in Colorado. We are a restaurant service company. So we deal with everything related to the kitchen exhaust system in the restaurant. So grease filters, exhaust fans, cleanings, all the greasy nastiness. That's our bread and butter, if you would. Started the business about 17 years ago or 18 years ago. I've expanded, every year for the most part, and kept building kind of new divisions of the company. So now we have 3 divisions that we run. But I got to a point where I realized everything was just kind of on my shoulders and didn't have an easy way to plug people in to any kind of system. And, when I reached out to colleagues in my industry, a lot of them didn't have the right answers. So I decided to look outside of that and realized I found PFC and was amazed at how you guys presented everything and, where it started off, the conversations, the podcast. This podcast, actually, I think was my first real introduction besides a Facebook ad.
Oh, okay. Cool, dude. So when you say that, everything was kind of on your shoulders, or I guess maybe sounds like you were wearing all the hats or, had a lot going on, what did that look like for you in a given week, or what did that mean in regards to the team stuff?
So, I've always run a small crew. So usually I've had anywhere from 1 to 3 people on my staff. But it was to the point where they were always a helper and I could never get out of the truck, get off the tools because of the fact that, I needed to be there on every single job. So I started looking at figuring out how to automate some stuff. And then, realized I was at a kind of a stuck point. I didn't know how to move forward from there.
Right. Yeah. We hear that a lot where some guys are I've become the biggest bottleneck in my own business, or I've hit a ceiling, right? There's different ways to describe it. So now how much time would you say you spend a week on the tools? What's your day-to-day like now?
So I've gotten it to where typically I have 2 days a week completely off, the tools or out of the truck.
Right.
which is good for me. We work on kind of high end specialty stuff, but I've gotten one of my divisions of the company to be completely automated. So
Okay.
now completely run, essentially without me.
Okay.
And systems in place for that, and working on the other two divisions doing the same thing here.
Okay. Wow. Amazing, dude. So let's talk about like the numbers. Cause one thing I see you post in the group a lot is like, hey, we just did this job. We hit this net, right? Like you seem to be on top of your job costing and like really tracking your profit. So why has that become so important to you? And maybe for people who are listening, who maybe don't know their numbers 100%, like they're not tracking their profit for job, right? They're not tracking their net. Like, why is it such a critical thing? And I know we harp about it, guys, if you're listening, like, man, these guys always talk about like profit and numbers and all this boring stuff, but there's a reason, right? So like Shayne, for you, why is that such I'm not going to say like an obsession, but why is that such an important part of your business and like looking at that on every job?
To be honest, I spent probably close to 15 years not knowing my numbers well enough to grow the business,
Right.
And could never figure out. I always knew I needed out of the truck,
Right.
but didn't have the money to pay someone else to be in there. I always had to be that second guy.
Right.
And I started tweaking some of that stuff. I started realizing that, we were on a different level than a lot of our competition. So we shouldn't be charging the same as the competition.
Right.
I stopped caring about what they charged and started looking at my numbers. And PFC really hit it home. And like, honestly, you guys made it to where I wasn't ashamed to say that I made money in my business, which is, it's a weird thing. But I mean, honestly, like it's a stigma about profit, and,
For sure.
and I talk my numbers with, some of the people in the group and other colleagues and stuff. And we've taken it from 10% to 15 to, most of our job costing ends up being about 32 to 34% profit.
Wow.
But, at the end of the year, now the more profit we make, the more I'm in a position to be able to expand. So just this year, I bought almost $100,000 worth of new equipment and tools. Some things to replace, some to grow and utilize technology in the business. Just bought another service van, doubled my shop space, so some of that eats into the profit.
No, but it's like that's a tactical reinvestment, right?
Right. And I was telling Carol in the group, the coolest thing that I had with this new van is I don't have to immediately put it into service. I've always, I've waited until I absolutely needed something, get it next day, boom, it's in service. And this one, we have some time to rig it out the way that we want, get wraps done on the vans, so I'm ahead of the game because of the fact that, we're putting the right profit onto jobs. It makes it so that I'm not struggling to figure out how to pay for something that I needed last week. I'm in a position to pay for what I'm going to need next week.
Right. Because when you don't have profit, right, and you don't have money, you then usually, as like you're saying, you'd make decisions, right, because of like your survival need, and usually end up making bad decisions, right? Because you're like, I got to get money, or I got to get profit, or I got to get something, so I'm going to have to do these things, or make these decisions, or take these jobs, or do these things, right? Like essentially reactively, right? Not because necessarily you should or want to, because you need to, and it doesn't give you the freedom to make good choices because you're just making a choice based on, hey, like I got to pay these bills, or like I got to keep this truck running, I got payments on it. And I think the big thing that you're kind of illustrating for everybody listening is like profit just like what it does is it buys you freedom, right? Because it buys you the ability to hire more people. So you get your time back, which is a form of freedom, right? It buys you the freedom of, hey, I can have vehicles that, don't have to be, used 24/7. It buys me better equipment, better space, and it just buys you peace of mind, right? And without that profit, again, like for 15 years, it sounds like you were super, super busy, which is great, but unfortunately you weren't really profitable versus, right? And that's what we hear all the time is so many guys like, man, I'm so busy. I'm booked out a year. Right. And it's like, yeah, but I'm working 12 hours a day and I'm taking 150 phone calls a day and like, I don't have any money. It's like, so would you rather be busy? And I think some contractors, I mean, I might offend some people with this. I think unfortunately, and you probably did this, Shayne, is like, there's this weird badge of honor in construction and contracting of like, I work so hard and I work so many hours, and people wear it like this badge of honor, but it's not a good thing.
I still do that,
Right. I mean, no, but it's bad. Right.
But
but you're not working like the 90 hours a week, right? That you may have been working before, 80, 90 hours. Like, and there's guys who are like, man, like I work so hard. Like I'm so proud of how many hours I work. It's like, it's the dumbest thing in the world. right? It's such a weird badge of honor, just as the shame and guilt and the stigma about profit, right? Is also, and it's because again, they, in my opinion, they stem from the same problem of people don't have any self-worth, right? And people don't understand their numbers and their time. So they have no concept of what their money's actually doing, right? Or what they're actually worth. And I'm sure you were the same, because if you're working 5 days a week in the van doing service work, right? Like you're not really valuing yourself as the owner, are you?
Right. And that is a big thing, is figuring out that you have value, and that value more than likely should be at a higher level than, some of the guys that are working for you too. I ran the business for a number of years where I'm on salary, they're on hourly. So if we had a big week, their paychecks are bigger than mine.
Which is insane.
Looking back, I just look at that and I'm like, what the hell was I doing? And the other thing that I will say is I've been able to give myself a raise and raise my standard of living a little bit. But more than that, I've been able to, like right now, market is hard with labor, right?
Right.
So you got to be able to pay people right. Well, knowing your numbers allows you to take a different approach. So my latest employee, he's only been with me for about 3 months, but he's on an hourly rate and a bonus structure. So the better he does, it's based off of performance and where our numbers come in on his job. So depending on if his labor and his expenses come in at X%, then he gets this bonus, and it's all structured. I will say, the more you know your numbers, the more you take the emotion out of whether it be sales, paying people. I look at it, and if one of my guys,
it's black and white.
I plug it into the spreadsheet. It puts out the number. That's what it is. Doesn't matter if this is my best friend or, brand new customer or whoever. The numbers are the numbers. You can tweak them if you really want to, but it gives you that emotional detachment so that, you can run the business by the numbers instead of off of your emotions.
Right. Because when you make those, again, emotional decisions or like gut decisions, right? Usually, unfortunately, they're not good ones. And when you make decisions by the numbers, right, you can very clearly see the effect of the decision in the numbers, right? Either it was a good decision or a bad decision. The numbers are going to tell you pretty quickly, usually, especially in your kind of work, which is faster turnaround, right? If you're doing like big, 6-month projects, maybe there's a bit of a lag time, but for most guys, if you're doing projects that are like, a couple days, a couple weeks, right? Like a month, you can see pretty quickly the impact, right? Of these decisions. So you bring up something interesting though, because you're in this you're in a very, niche, I would say. Compared to a lot of guys, obviously, listening to the podcast or in the program who are plumbers, electricians, general contractors, carpenters, et cetera, remodelers. So what we hear a lot, and what I've talking to thousands of people over these last 5 years, is most contractors, or a lot of contractors, think like, oh, I'm unique, I'm special, like the kind of work I do is super unique, and no one knows what it's like, and none of these things will work for me. So you're in this very particular niche, right? You're using the exact same systems, like you mentioned. You're using the labor burden calculator, the job costing calculator that we have, that everybody else uses. Why do these things work regardless of, the kind of work that you do? And you may have even thought that coming into PFC, like, man, like these guys probably don't have a lot of other restaurant, cleaning service companies, right? Like, why are these fundamentals, so important? And Shayne, why do they work for everybody?
Well, number one, yes. When I joined PFC, I thought I was going to be way outside of everybody else. And industry-wise, certainly. But at the end of the day, the books are the books, and jobs coming in, it doesn't matter how many zeros are behind it. You still are working on the same percentages. So it doesn't matter if it's $1,000 job or $100,000 job or $10 million job. It all comes out to be the same. As far as actually in our field, because of the fact that all of our projects are like half day, 1 day, something like that, we have to know our numbers and have them dialed in really, really well. Because by the time we look back, like let's say the next quarter, if we realize we screwed up something, and we're way off track, we might have 100 jobs in at that point and another 30 booked that we're kind of stuck with an old model, if you will.
Right.
When you're on big projects, I listen to some of the contractors and they're like, change orders. That's where you can make up for your mistakes. You start off with stuff. And I'm like, we don't do change orders. Like everything is 100% set.
You're more like a service plumber, right? Or someone like that.
Exactly.
It's a similar model, right? But why are these fundamentals so critical, right? Whether it's how to hire properly, like whether it's, again, how to job cost, how to run your team meetings, right? Like how to manage your time. Because I think a lot of contractors, and I tell people this all the time, they think they're a snowflake. They're like, all my problems are unique. Hiring for my business is impossible because of like where I am or the work I do. And what I say to everybody is like, sure, like you're a unique person. Like, yeah, you're totally unique for sure. But all of your problems, right? Everybody has the same problems. Like everybody who's listening to this podcast isn't making enough money, doesn't have enough time, right? Is wearing too many hats, right? All these things that you were. So like, what do you say to those kind of contractors who think like, oh, I'm so special and like, woe is me, right?
Yeah, no matter where you're at, the biggest thing is freeing up your time, delegating and putting some of that onus on your employees. And it doesn't matter what size company that is. Right. Knowing how to use your numbers, it makes it so that you free up your time of the D clients, the right. ones that are a waste, that aren't profitable, and you can invest your time and energy into the customers that are going to help you grow the business. And again, it doesn't matter what kind of business, it all still is the same. All of us are unique and have different problems, but at the end of the day, we're all still dealing with employees, with customers, and right. with the numbers,
Yeah, it's fundamentals, right? And yeah, and again, it's just like it's the same kind of logic I think of like you said earlier, like there is no industry average, right? There is no market rate. Like everybody's prices are going to be theirs based on, how much overhead they have, right? Like what their costs are, right? Like there could be another guy in the state next door to you doing the exact same thing. He could have a completely different markup, right? He could have a completely different labor burden because of, right, the shop that he's in. Maybe he's paying more rent than you. Maybe he has less vehicles, right? Maybe he decides to pay his guys more, right? All these things are going to be different. At the end of the day, what he's going to have to charge is going to be unique to him. And it might be similar to what you charge, right? But we can't just say like, hey, everybody's going to charge, X. Because it can't be, right? It's just like everybody, can't do all of these things that we're talking about the same way, because there's no way, right? Like, and I think that's the biggest myth in the industry of like, there's like, hey, I just got to follow my competition, or I got to go what the customer says market rate is, or I got to do that. It's like, it's a dead sentence, That's how I see it.
Well, realistically, in my industry, we get a lot of, kind of fly-by-night companies that end up, they operate out of their house. They got one truck.
Yeah, no insurance.
They have no overhead. Yeah, no insurance. That's a big one. And they go in and tell a customer, yeah, we can do it for a couple $100. And we go in and say it'll be $1,000. What you do have to do is know your worth and be confident in that, right. And understand why you're charging differently, and don't concern yourself with what the competition is charging, for sure.
No, because those guys are just pricing themselves out of business ultimately, right? Like they're not going to be here in a couple of years, right? And also like those jobs, they're not doing a good job at that price, right? Like the customer is going to quickly see that it's like, hey, this job was too good to be true at that price, right? Like right. There's a reason. Okay, cool, dude. I also wanted to touch on something because I know you've worked on it a lot with Andrew, and it's probably, one of the biggest challenges facing everybody right now, which is hiring, right? So I know you put some work into that, you made some hires. And again, most people are like right now, hey, it's really hard to hire. They say things like people are lazy, people don't want to work, or like, there's no point. Everybody wants too much money. So how did you kind of attack the hiring program? How did you maybe use some of the PFC tools, and how is kind of the way you hire changed now?
Yeah. So I kind of took a hybrid approach. I'm a very detail oriented person. So I like a lot of detail. I tell customers, I'll send them a novel for an email. So when I put together my job ad, Andrew talked to me a lot about, making sure that people feel like it's about them, and presenting, it's essentially a sales pitch for your company. That's how you're getting someone interested. So I took that and then combined all the detail stuff that I put in there. And number one, I had a lot fewer applicants, which was a little concerning, but looking at it realistically, I realized I was already filtering people out that weren't going to be
like manually, right? Yeah. You're already wasting time doing it, right?
Yeah. So I ended up, I think I was down to 3 interviews on this last hire, and one of them came in and he said, I really wanted to come in and apply here because I loved your job ad. He's like, it spoke to me, and it was so detailed. I knew exactly what I was going to be doing, and I loved it. I wanted to be here. And I ended up hiring him. Okay. So, it's making sure that you're being real. Like, you're presenting your company as it is. Don't act like it's, glitter and rainbows if no, you're down in the mud every day, right?
Yeah.
So be realistic with it and let your culture and your values come out. And Andrew was very helpful with some of that stuff and gave me some examples to look off of, and then tweaked everything, and put it together. And we're getting ready to do some more hiring here next month after we move into the new shop, expanded space. So we'll take that same approach. I know we're looking for the unicorn out there, right? We're not looking for just a warm body, but if you present it properly, then you'll find that right person and be able to bring them in. And if you're costing your stuff out right, then you can pay them what they need to make sure that they can stay too.
Right. Oh, they're happy. Yeah. And again, like most guys make bad hiring decisions when, again, they're running around doing all these things. Yep. They're desperate. You're not making money. Right. Or you're like, hey, I'm just super busy. I need more people. But it's like, are these guys actually even making you money? Like, are these jobs going well? Right. And we see so many people hire reactively. And as you've probably done it, I'm sure in your 18-year journey, when you hire reactively, when you don't take the time to like filter, right, you end up usually the bad person. And I don't know about you, but I've always found like the cost of the bad person of hiring them outweighs the cost of not hiring them at all, usually.
Oh yeah. I had a desperate hire last year. And he was with me for 3 months. And in that time, it cost me $3,500 in hard costs of damaged product and vehicle and all kinds of stuff. So yes, I totally understand. And yeah, I agree. Don't do that. If you're desperate for a warm body, you're better off cutting some of the jobs off the books than turning your whole company into kind of a half-ass, approach on that. And
right. But what would you say to other guys out there? Like in this, I'll tell you what I say, which is like, hey, maybe hiring is hard. Maybe, there are people who aren't as thrilled about working now, and all these things, right? And none of those things are probably your fault as the owner, but guess what? Like, they're your problem. And if you need to hire people, it's on you to figure it out. You can blame everybody you want, right? And like be a victim, but ultimately, there's other people around you who are probably hiring. There's other companies who are growing. Like people are figuring it out. So what would you say to people who have that mindset of like, oh man, there's no even point in hiring because there's nobody out there? Like, what would you say to that?
And trust me, I kind of have that perspective still because man, it's interesting.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not saying it's easy, right? But
yeah. But yeah, like you said, you got to own, this is the world, you got to deal with the problem. You got to figure out how to face it. The biggest thing is having money in the bank, making sure that your margins are where they need so that you can adjust to get those right people. Because you're competing. So you got to present your company properly. You got to be out there. We use social media, quite a bit, but more than anything, you got to be able to hire that person. And they're probably, if they're that unicorn, they're going to come in needing more than maybe what you were comfortable paying the last guy.
And they might have other offers, right? From other companies.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like the only game in town.
There might be a lot of people out there available for work, but there's, fewer and fewer in the pool that you actually want to come work for you. So really dialing in that process and having the money to pay them or benefits or whatever you do.
Yeah. Whatever makes you unique. So listen, one thing we haven't talked about, Shayne, and not all guys like to talk about it, but I always like to talk about it. How is this journey? How is actually, making these changes in the business, improving things? How has this impacted you personally, would you say? Because like ultimately running the business poorly, right? It takes an impact, whether it's, home life, whether it's your stress, whether it's, you're not working out as much, like whatever it might be. So how would you say, these changes and kind of getting control back, how has this impacted you, on a day-to-day basis?
So instead of looking one or two steps in front of me all the time, I can now see out quite a distance. So that relieves a lot of stress, day-to-day stress.
For sure. Not knowing what's going on is stressful.
Right. They always say money doesn't buy happiness, but it sure as hell, being broke sure as hell makes you stressed and makes you not happy. So being able to restructure and prioritize stuff, it gave me, I can see a game plan. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and having some money in the bank, both personally and business wise, makes it to where if something breaks, if something happens, it's not the end of the world. I can afford to take care of it, and it doesn't affect the bigger game plan. Spent a lot of years where it was like, if the van breaks down, well, shit, where do I come up with $2,000 to fix this? Now I don't have those stresses. So PFC has been monumental on that. Not only have we gone up. We're up about 80% revenue wise from last year, and our profit, will end up being probably about 50 to 60% higher than what it was last year. Obviously, with the new stuff that I keep buying and expanding, we'll have to refigure that at the end of the year. But that's kind of where we are job cost wise.
Wow. So I don't know if you're listening, I don't know what you do with your money, but I don't know really where you can get a 50% year over year return on your money. So I would say if anybody questions, hey, maybe I can't afford to get help, or I can't afford to get coaching, or I can't afford systems, or I can't afford to fix these things, right? 50%. Now, you're doing really well, dude. Not everybody in the program is saying gets a 50%, year over year delta. But at the end of the day, there's clearly an ROI here. And I'm not trying to make this a sales pitch for PFC, but what I'm trying to say is whether it's hiring a really good person, whether it's buying better equipment, whether it's investing in systems, getting a bookkeeper, right? Like these things, if you do them properly, they will pay an ROI. And again, the best case you're going to get in the market, like 7 to 10%. So I'll take 20, I'll take 30. And it's on your own money, right? Like you're just self-investing, right?
Well, and I'll be honest, I was real hesitant signing up with PFC in the first place. It was a big, expense that I had never spent anything on, of like consulting wise or anything. But I'm really glad I did it. And when you reached out saying, hey, you're 1 year's up, I didn't take even 2 minutes to consider whether or not I was going to continue on with the program.
Right.
And I'll be honest, I underutilized what you guys offer.
And you still got those results.
So I mean, I know this year, my goal is to really dial in and be hitting all the sessions, be hitting all the coaches.
Yeah, I know right after this, you're hopping on one of the group calls, you said, right?
Yeah.
You're going to hop on the Friday Momentum. Amazing. So you still avoided my question. I'm going to ask it again because I can tell the kind of guy you are. I know your personality profile very well. Personally, though, like I don't know if you're married, you have kids, all that stuff, like, hobbies, like what are you maybe doing that you weren't doing before, right? Like, how are you maybe showing up at home differently than you were before? Because when you're stressed out about money and you're working a lot of hours, you're generally not the best guy around at family time, right? Like it's generally not good.
And that one's a little bit tougher. All of our kids are grown, moved out of the house and on their own at this point.
How old are you? You look young.
I turned 40 next month.
So you had kids young.
Yeah. Don't do the math on it. It's okay.
Yeah. I'm doing the math in my head.
But my wife actually came and started helping out in the business last year, which was right around the same time as I joined PFC. Okay. So it's a little hard to we had so many changes in the last year and a half, as far as our home with kids, moving out, getting out on their own, my wife leaving her career and coming here, so that personal thing, it's a little bit tougher, but I will say, she has a better understanding of what this business is. And she's been huge in helping organize and help hold me accountable. I have her sit in on a lot of the meetings and sessions in here, which is good. So then she's on the same page. So when I say, hey, we need to do this, she already knows what we're looking at. It makes it so that we're home at the same time. We used to work very different schedules. And now, for the most part, we're home at the same time. Get to go home. We have a house full of cats. So I spend my free time enjoying them, kicking back. I will say the biggest personal change is I used to bring all my work home every weekend. And I'd usually spend a lot of time doing it at home. I'm still in the habit. Sometimes I take my work home. Most of the time, it stays in my car and I don't touch it. So it's available if I want it, but it's
you don't feel you have to be on top of it.
Exactly. So that one is a big personal change. When I'm home instead of, half at work all the time.
Right. Now, did your wife decide to come into the business because she had seen the changes you were making with PFC and was like, hey, this seems like something more I want to get into? And like before she was like, I don't really, it was maybe a bit more chaotic, or is it just kind of a natural timing thing?
She had to leave her career, what she had done. Just career change. The timing, not much to it. Honestly, in the previous, 17 years, she had been in my shop maybe a handful of times. And that was
I was just curious because we work with, as you've probably seen, dude, in the group, we work with tons of family businesses, tons of husband wife teams, and a lot of wives get sucked into the business because the husband's like running it so poorly and it's chaotic. And she's like, okay, I'll come. He's like, you got to come help me. Right. But then a lot of wives are like really leery to invest a lot of time and put in because like this business is like it's a gong show, right? And it's like we're not making any money. And then when they come to PFC, they're like, oh my God, like I found all this training and support and resources. And then they like really start like going after it, right? And like, and really, like in my opinion, when I find like most of our husband-wife teams in the program, shout out to all you awesome wives in the program, you know, they really get after it and they like really do a lot of the hard work. You know, they're the ones job costing, they're the ones, you know, putting the books together, analyzing the numbers, right? Like getting SOPs in place, you know, putting employee handbooks together. But I can understand if your husband, you're listening to this and your husband runs a contracting business and he's working 80 hours a week and it's like a shit show, I can understand why you wouldn't want to get involved because you're like, this is a total mess, right? And I'm sure those 15 years of craziness, like I'm sure those times when your wife was like, man, like I don't like this, right?
Yeah, she wanted nothing to do with it before.
Right.
And I brought her in to help on the office stuff.
Which is very normal, right? That's where most guys they don't bring their wife in to get on site doing work, right? They bring them in to help on the office side.
But here's the funny thing. I'm very good about matching employees to like what their skill set is and putting the right hat on them. Right. So we started off with the office hat and she helped with organizing and doing some basic stuff. But very quickly, she realized she doesn't like the office work either. So we are hiring an admin as we open up and have space in the new area. But she's very good at field work and kind of managing the shop and the inventory, hands-on, you know, making sure everything's ready to go, prep, clean up, and out in the field too, whether it be scraping grease out, 50-year-old grease out of ductwork or, helping install.
My wife would not do that.
Right? Like she's right there with me. And it's great because it also has allowed us, like sometimes we travel, a lot of our work's an hour or more away.
Right.
So we'll go out together and it gives us time. We can talk on personal stuff. We can talk about work stuff. We have a good, kind of balance between that stuff, but we get to spend a hell of a lot more time together now and productive time on both sides, business and personal, even if we're just driving to a job. So that has been really nice. Awesome. I feel we've reconnected more than where we were before.
It's amazing. So what do you, I guess this is a question I ask everybody at the end, like, what are you most excited about for the future?
Expanding and opening up. I got some other things in the works, but looking at, we have 3 divisions of the company right now. In the next couple of years, that'll be 4 or 5. Okay. And PFC has helped, me get the money where it needs to be able to be in a position to expand, to have that space. Once I get a couple more people hired to take some of the other hats off of me, which will be the plan. I told some of the guys in the group that, end of Q1, that's the goal. Okay. Nice. So we'll do that. And then it gives me time to tinker and play. I'm also an inventor. So I like being able to play and figure out better efficiencies. And if it frees up my time from in the field, I get to focus on what I love doing. I also love teaching. So I teach a national course where people learn how to do exhaust fan work. Got one up here in a couple of weeks. So in the new space that I have, be a dedicated area to that, as opposed to right now, I have to transform my shop into a classroom essentially twice a year, and it's a hassle. So looking forward to a lot less stress and a lot more systemizing and processing all of these things.
Amazing, dude. Well, listen, hats off to you. You've done obviously a ton of hard work. And I want to make that clear to everybody that like Shayne has done a lot of hard work. There's a lot of time and effort you have to put in, to our program or any program, or whether you're doing it yourself to make these changes. So, you need to get the recognition, dude, because you showed up to the calls, you implemented, right? You did the modules. This doesn't happen by accident, right? Like you don't get a jacked, body and a 6-pack, right? Without putting in a ton of work, and your business doesn't get 80% growth and 50% profit without putting in a ton of work, right? Like it doesn't happen. I'm excited, obviously, see what happens, on your journey this year, dude. Maybe we'll have you back and we'll do like a recap. And otherwise, if you're listening, guys, and this has resonated with you and you want more info, just click the buttons in the description, the show notes. You can just send us a message here on YouTube, on Instagram. And if you're struggling, right, and you just want to kind of get off the hamster wheel, we're here to help. Shayne, awesome having you on, dude. Thanks so much for your time. We'll catch you on the flip and enjoy the Hawaii session, momentum session this Friday today.
Sounds good. Thanks, Lynn.
Thanks, dude.
Hey, Rockstars. Thank you for watching the No Bullshit Podcast for Contractors. If you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe button. And if you're serious about growing and need help, click on the link below. Myself and my team would love to help and give you the necessary tools so you can take your contracting business to the next level. And remember, dominate, delegate, and deliver.